Smith, president, CEO, and founder at Sales. I lived it. I spent most of my career in sales and sales leadership, and the one constant throughout my career was the need to constantly be prospecting. Every Monday was like starting over or starting at zero. And so I learned firsthand that it was a problem companies had not only had, but were trying to solve a number of different ways. Well, I think the first thing we got was validation. We had product market fit of some sort early on, which told us we were solving a problem that needed to be solved. I think the key thing we learned after that is that most of our users assumed there was not a better way. So many of them, especially in sales, had come to accept the status quo. And if you think about sales, it's an industry or a job function where if you fail 98% of the time and only succeed 2% of the time, that's not only successful, but you are doing, at or above the standard industry average in terms of prospect engagement. So we learned that they had this problem, and B, they were accepting the status quo. Well, again, I think we learned that they were sort of okay with the current state of things. And so not only did it surprise us, but it motivated us to educate them as to why there was a better way, or how it was a better way. And this is key because it wasn't a matter of educating them that they needed the product. Again, we had product market fit, but it was educating them on how much better it would make their lives. In particular, when I think about our solution, it's the first or was the first software to automate all prospecting. But companies were trying to automate prospecting by orchestrating 6 to 12 software subscriptions. So they had tried to solve the problem, not with just one solution. And so giving them that single solution as a way to automate all prospecting was something that they needed, but then educating them on how we think about ROI, how to see that it's working, what to do with all the space back they have, and having their own AI or their own sale bot was a really important part for us. I think I had a little bit of an assumption that every salesperson was as eager as I was in my career to go above and beyond and close as many deals as possible. And I'm trying to say that carefully because I think that, that can be good and bad at a level. But what I specifically mean is the idea to me that my own bot, or sale bot, we call it, is delivering me opportunities and working on my behalf while I'm doing things elsewhere was really inspiring. Because there were so many times in my career that I needed that. I really could use a hand, right? I'm very busy. I'm doing as much as I can. I'm trying to close as many deals as possible. The fact that I had this other entity or software product working on my behalf really meant a lot to me. It took some education with a certain population we sold to really get them to visualize it and understand it for what it was. And candidly, what didn't help us is we didn't have a user interface until we were post 2.5 million ARR, which now looking back with rose-colored glasses, we can be really proud of that, but it made it difficult. How do you know what the ROI of AI is? How do you know it's actually working? You only know what you can see, and that was a key thing for us to solve. We all come up with an idea, and the ones that are really good, we get out of the shower and dry off and get to work on them. And then we probably see if the domain's available. And then we know we have something. Take the same approach with customers and with product market fit. Ask them if it's solving the problem. Ask them where it's missing. Ask them why. I just asked this question today. What do I have to do to make this an essential part of your day? And be ready for them to tell you that it never will be, or it won't be until X, Y, Z are different. But you're not going to know otherwise. The only caveat I would say here is make sure you're asking the right customers, not the customers that will tell you what you want to hear, but the customers that you vision selling billions of dollars worth of your product to. So companies have to prospect to grow business, and they can't simply survive on deals they already have. Either they release new products and services and they need to grow that market, or sometimes they want to explore the viability of an additional market. In both cases, they have to prospect. There's usually a lot of potential people they could prospect, but they only have so many humans. They have a lot of great people, they have great systems and processes, they still have no time to prospect. So for the last decade, they've tried to give themselves more time by automating parts of the prospecting process. We call this the sales obstacle course, and it refers specifically to point solutions that sales teams are stacking on top of their salespeople. Think contact databases, research tools, sales intelligence platforms, the CRM, marketing automation, content generation. These are all data validation. These are all tools that salespeople are using. Instead of prospecting or instead of selling, they're hopping from platform to dashboard. So how did this become a problem? Well, 10 years ago, a salesperson might spend, 6 hours out of their day selling and 2 hours out of their day in the CRM. The sales leader said, hey, you're a great salesperson, but you're not being efficient because you're doing all these tasks one at a time. So we're going to pile on these point solutions to help make you more efficient. And what's happened now is the flip side of that. Now the salesperson spends 6 hours of their day in platforms and dashboards in the CRM and only 2 hours a day actually selling. They're not doing what they love. They're doing work that they're not that great at sometimes, and other times, or at a minimum, they don't want to be doing or weren't hired to do. So what we're trying to do is automate prospecting from end to end, autonomously, and give them space back to be the human sales rep that they were hired to be. In a nutshell, that's what we're solving. Well, when I thought about myself as a sales executive and what would happen if I was starting a new job as a salesperson, the next Monday. And I thought, wow, there would be such an enormous amount of time spent ramping up just to get to the part that I'm good at. And I thought that it sounded miserable. And the idea literally was, what if I had my own bot to automate prospecting and just serve me more opportunities to close? Because I was a closer and I was a relationship builder and an expander, and that's where my strength was. So if I had a sale bot automating that upfront prospecting work and all of it, not just sending emails outbound, but everything from reading responses to finding the people to begin with, then I could be much more successful because I would constantly have opportunities served up. And then I took it a step further later down the road and thought, what does this mean to their management? What does this mean to a sales manager? And there was a lot of problems to solve there as well. But that's kind of how I narrowed in on it. And I will say I was pretty confident about product market fit from the beginning because, again, I did the job and I knew there was a need. But I also quickly learned that they call them sales enablement companies. Most sales enablement companies are doing just that. They're enabling more manual work. They're not really doing the hard part, which in sales is creating demand, closing business, driving expansions, etc. Well, the thing that I did not give sales leaders enough credit for is how much they want to learn. And so the need was always there, and we were pretty spot on with what they wanted the most: leads, revenue opportunities. But what surprised me is how much they wanted to learn from those and scale their sales operation based on, in our case, what the SaleBot's uncovering. But you could call it sales intelligence. But look, it's a really key part of our offering, because as the SaleBot reads and increases in intelligence and gets smarter, we want to share that intelligence with the sales leader as well. So that was a key learning for us. I've had tons of ideas. I mean, I said this a little bit earlier, but anyone who's ever taken a shower has ideas. The difference with sales and SaleBot was that I got out and dried off and got to work ASAP. It was the first core idea I had around our product and solution. But what I'll say that changed was my original idea is that individual salespeople would buy it. So I'm a top salesperson. I have my own sale bot. It automates prospecting. I'm going to pay a subscription for that, etc. But what I changed was I started to look at the makeup of a sales team, and it looks a little bit like a sitcom. There's different personalities. There's different types of people that make that team work, different strengths. And if you look at the prospect or customer side, same thing. They respond differently to different people, different ages, sexes, aggressiveness level, etc. So the sale bot evolved into being personality driven, and to really account for what made a salesperson unique. And so instead of selling it to individuals, we were going to sell fleets of sale bots to sales teams that represented the unique traits of those different people that worked on the team. I have to, when I'm coming up with ideas, I have to have something to write with. I'll tell you the most common scenario for me to get an idea is I'm reading something, usually that has nothing to do with business or a particular problem. I'm not reading to solve a problem, but reading just to read, and an idea comes up because I'm fully obsessed and ingrained with my business and this company. And so most of the things I think throughout the day, selfishly, I relate back to what we're building. There's no way to avoid that. So if I know that's going to happen, I have to be able to write. During COVID, which is when a lot of these ideas came to be, I painted the walls in my home office with whiteboard paint, and I just started writing on the walls. I heard that a lot of musicians do that sort of thing, and so I just wanted to be able to write on the walls and not have any significant repercussions from that. So I got the whiteboard paint out and started writing on the walls. I journal a lot and write ideas down. I also keep myself accountable in my journal, and so what I do is I number my entries. I also carry over key ideas from the last entry so that I have a reference point, so that it's not just random thoughts everywhere. It's almost like a working journal, I would say. So I'm writing it to get it out, yes, but I'm also going to revisit and think about it a little bit more. There's been all kinds of great ideas in there. There's been all kinds of awful ideas there as well. I know at one point there's an idea around the SaleBot having some sort of physical device element and like a start button. There's just all kinds of crazy stuff that I've thought of. But always writing is really key. There's another thing that I've done when I knew I had to brainstorm, because if you think about having ideas and being creative, the challenge that happens at a startup is soon enough you're having success and things are really busy. And as soon as that space is invaded with people that have a difference of opinion, people that maybe are outside your walls but think they are inside the walls, and they want to share their opinion because they want the company to succeed as well, or customers, you have to find a way to not lose any of that feedback and keep that space sacred for you, the founder that created this to begin with, to get ideas out. So what I've done when I know I have to brainstorm and I may or may not have the space to be creative is I record and talk to myself. A lot of sales was developed or ideated upon at the Lake of the Ozarks, and the drive down, the time there, the drive back, there's a lot of talking to myself and journaling and writing, etc.
No, it was an epiphany. Happened it was 11:36 a.m. on July 4th,
2018. Was being yelled at from my family to hurry and get in the boat. We were at the Lake of the Ozarks, and I needed a minute. I wrote down in my notes on my iPhone, sales. We actually ended up calling the business Sale for a while, but the first word was sales, which was pretty audacious, but spelled with AI. I wrote down what I thought it means. I ran and got in the boat, and it was on from that point. Like, it has felt nonstop from the idea moment. And it's been, it's hard to believe how nonstop it's been. July 3rd, 2018 was a very different day for me than July 4th, 2018 beyond. The hardest part is doubt. And you could call it imposter syndrome, but I don't know if it almost sounds too fluffy to call it that. It's doubt, it's doubting yourself, it's trying to find courage, it's asking yourself questions, sending yourself on these ridiculous searches to validate that there is a possibility. You have to focus on possibilities. I would get in the shower again and just remind myself that I had a business, there were paying customers, they needed what we were selling, and I had to hurry up and get to work. Because that doubt will sink in and you have to just block it out. It's total nonsense. Well, the first thing I did was I wrote that note to myself in my iPhone. And I left that note kind of alone. I didn't go back to it. But I did think through how it would work. I did write to myself Q&As, like what are objections to this? Why wouldn't it work? What are the challenges? And I would write down why those weren't valid or how I would overcome those, to do two things. One, to think through how I would overcome them, but two, to have a record there so that if I worried about it in the future, or if again that doubt crept up, I could reference it and remember that I had already solved that problem. So I had a very baked idea of what it would be. I had a good amount of knowledge about sales prospecting and tactics that were required. I even had a good amount of technical knowledge for how it would have to be done, particularly on like the email and engagement side. So I took all of that and I found a machine learning developer on Upwork. This is a critical thing because we started with a problem before we started with AI. It wasn't what's a cool AI company we could build. It was very much here's a problem. And I think AI can help us solve it better. That's why I started with a machine learning engineer and explained my concept. As it turns out, machine learning and AI work was not all that he did. And we were able to go a really, a long way just with the MVP he built. However, it's also a go-to-market product. So the same thing sales teams would buy it and use it for, we needed to use it for as well. And because it prospected, we turned it on to see how it would work. I was at O'Hare Airport the day it got turned on, and the day we turned it on, and to see someone respond positively was huge for me and huge for validation. They didn't become a customer or anything. But just seeing that was really, it went a long way in me believing that it worked. So that became our go-to-market function. Before we had salespeople, we had SaleBots for a long time, and that's what drove the early growth of the business. The MVP was a program running on our first engineer's computer across the Atlantic Ocean, and me trusting that it was working and me seeing results, like people responding to a SaleBot for the first time. That was really the MVP. Around that, we built a user interface for us to use internally that was not customer facing, that could monitor different metrics. And from there, we built controls, because a big theme early on was SaleBot is your own. No two SaleBots are the same. You should be able to control it, modify it, etc. We put some of those things in place very early. Programs like Elasticity that simulated what a salesperson would do if they walked into a networking event in terms of the population of contacts, its sources, etc. Those were built early on, and we just kept building on top of it. The problem was that we had customers very soon after that because it was a go-to-market product. And so soon we had to get good, and I'm not sure how good we got at it, but we had to be good at knowing what we were going to build, because this new noisy customer that was basically funding a bootstrapped company, they were asking for, is that what we want to build for others as well? So that became something we had to discern quickly. My idea on prototyping, I'll tell you, has changed after going through this experience. I think that there needs to be an environment of mutual understanding on iterations, on making progress, not making perfect. There needs to be a feedback loop, and there needs to be an acceptance that we're building and this will always get better. That's something that I could have embraced sooner to make us go even faster, because, newsflash, it's never going to be perfect anyway, and it's always going to change or update. That's the best tip I would probably give there. I also would have asked for customer feedback even sooner. First time that they really interacted was me selling it. So if you think about the life cycle, our internal sale bot would have discovered a potential customer and delivered a revenue opportunity to me. And I would have gotten on the phone with them or on a Zoom call and talked through the idea. Them asking me questions or giving objections helped me decide the stance that I wanted to take. There's a very special bench to me on Nantucket Island that I got this email from a large Fortune 500 customer that became our first large customer. And they were really kind of poking about how unique each SaleBot is. And it was the first time I got to sit. It took a while, but I sat and wrote out to them, here's why every SaleBot's unique, just like every sales human is unique. And so things like that defined the principles early on of the rules with the product or what it was going to represent. And what's interesting is, when you're super early stage or you only have a few customers, a few employees, that feedback gets to the top quickly. I think what has been interesting for me to see is how long it takes to get to the top, even when you're at 20 or 30 people, etc. So we have product release meetings where ahead of something being released, we're reviewing with the team what is being released, why it's important, why it's on the roadmap, the company objectives or key results that it rolls up to. And we also spend time in that meeting reviewing future releases and other work that the team's doing. There's representatives in that meeting from multiple departments that can help channel the message coming from customers or coming from internal teams and get that feedback to us so that product decisions can be made accordingly. That's probably the swiftest way that we accelerate the product development process and get feedback today. I still speak with customers. So I speak with customers and get their feedback regularly. The other thing that's been really interesting is allowing the board dynamic to influence product and not being afraid of that. Here's how. If you're showing your product to yourself, you might be making some concessions in your mind as to why something's okay or why something's good enough or how you'll get around it if something asks about something. But if you show it to your board or show it to close friends, people you trust, you're going to find your eyes going to the places that maybe need to be better explained or need more help or could be more user-friendly, etc. I found that to be a really helpful process as well. I think the first approach at what became Starboard failed. It didn't even get off the ground. It was very clear to me that we needed different people working on it, that I needed to do a better job of explaining the vision, that we needed people to roadmap it and to create stories around it. It didn't even get off the ground. And it was the first attempt at a user interface. And it took probably 7 or 8 months from that point to actually get the real one, now Starboard, live. And we've learned a lot from that process too. But it did fail. And it's one of the reasons that it took us from 0 to 2.5 million ARR before we even had an external user interface. Pivoting is, in a way, something that's happening every single week at a startup. That is a benefit. It's something that is an asset to a startup. It's not a negative. Now, obviously, you don't want things to be chaotic, but at a startup, you have the ability to continuously pivot and make small pivots along the way. I really believe that every week should be some sort of small pivot. I think that we associate the word pivot with turning around, giving up on something. It's really just adjusting. It's making a move and adjusting for the market, for customer feedback, for internal feedback. And we're doing that all the time. The transformative pivot we had was when we really decided to level up on the logos and the size of customers that we were pursuing. We really wanted to start selling to enterprises. And the reason we thought we'd be able to is we built all of the tech ourselves and all of the infrastructure was our own. So we're not just a wraparound of someone else's software, meaning a customer can have success with our product without it needing to integrate with their systems. There's integration available if they need that, but they don't have to for it to have success. So when we pivoted and started really challenging ourselves to go after larger companies and larger logos, it resulted in a lot of success. I think that we'll continue down that track and continue to make adjustments to our ideal customer profile, etc. Now, what was scary about it? Walking away from customers that were too small, that's scary because no one wants to stop generating revenue. But when you really look at it from a higher place and realize all the time your team's spending on people that don't value your product for what it is, or maybe people that are applying a services mindset to a software product and therefore churning like a services business does, it starts to make a lot of sense. January 2019, the first SaleBot went live. And so there'd been a lot of planning, there'd been a lot of restarts and work behind the scenes, but what went into it was basically, there wasn't a big ceremony or something like that. It was just, that was the day, and we turned it on and started seeing what results we got, and we're really pleased to see somebody engage positively with the SaleBot for the first time. The word that I had in my head every day from launch of this company was possibilities. You know, you want to ask questions like, well, will this work? Will it not work? But the real question is, what's possible? What if it did work? What would be possible if that happened? Or what would be possible if sales teams were working one-to-one with SaleBots instead of other roles or other softwares? And so I constantly thought about possibilities. And that's what drove the initial launch, and continuing to ask myself that question and discouraging myself from thinking small or coming off a bold idea was a really key part of it. I think sales is an incredible testament to the power of possibilities and what happens when you don't shut off big ideas that come to you, but instead say, this one I'm passionate about, and this one I'm going to get out there and make happen. And it's a testament to someone that maybe has a lot of range or a lot of life experience or has done a lot of things, knowing that it's not them alone that has to make the company successful, but the company is a sum of its parts. So beyond you and your passion, if you find great people and can get them passionate about it too, then it's really possible. And so looking at an idea for more than a fleeting thought, or for more than something you should just brush off because you're busy, what would it be like to dedicate a weekend, to dedicate a week, to dedicate a month or a pandemic to exploring the viability of that idea and going down every road and uncovering what's possible? For someone like me that prefers taking vacations in my mind, that's a lot of fun. But with this particular idea, everything in the beginning just felt like it was going to turn to gold. It just felt like every rock I pick up, there's another path forward. And that's really what you're looking for. It doesn't mean there weren't obstacles. There's plenty of obstacles, right? From data privacy to, there's just been tons of obstacles. But every one of those obstacles in startup world is an opportunity. It is not a reason to stop. It's a reason to keep going. When I was 15, a few friends of mine and I decided that he decided he was going to take his sister's car out. We didn't have driver's license. And so he snuck his sister's car out and we all piled in and we were driving along and we got pulled over. And the cop said, "Where are you coming from?" And all three of us pointed a different direction. And the cop said, "I don't know what's going on, but I just wanted to tell you that your lights are off." And so he walked away, no ticket. And my friend said, "Guys, that's a sign that we should stop." And my friend and I in the back said, "No, that's a sign we keep going." We kept going. So I just would say, keep going.